My name is Maria Thompson, and at 35, I have just been promoted to partner at one of Chicago's top law firms. This achievement was not handed to me. It was built on sleepless nights, countless sacrifices of personal time, and an unshakable determination that I refuse to let waver. Yet despite everything I have accomplished in the eyes of my parents, Catherine and Robert, I remain little more than a faint shadow compared to my younger sister, Sophie. Sophie, at 30, works in marketing. She has what my parents call the perfect life: a husband, Tom, and a pair of bright, smiling twins. Growing up, Sophie was always the center of attention. A B+ on her report card was treated as a triumph worthy of praise. Her graduation party was lavish, filled with balloons, banners, and catered food. When she chose a private university, my parents gladly wrote the checks without hesitation. I lived a different reality. I worked 3 jobs just to afford my tuition at a public school. And when I got engaged, my parents contributed only $3,500 along with a curt suggestion to keep it simple. That relationship collapsed under financial strain, leaving me with more scars than memories. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. The Secret House and a Silent Plan for Retribution. 9 months ago, I made a decision that felt both rebellious and liberating. I secretly purchased a stunning oceanfront house in Malibu, California. The money came from my promotion bonus and years of disciplined real estate investments, my own silent victories that no one in my family ever bothered to acknowledge. The house itself is nothing short of breathtaking. Its architecture is sleek and modern, built with clean lines and expansive glass walls stretching from floor to ceiling. Sunlight spills into every corner of the open spaces, reflecting off polished surfaces, making the house feel alive with warmth and clarity. Beyond the walls of glass lies a private infinity pool, its turquoise water seemingly merging with the endless blue of the Pacific Ocean. When I sit on the edge of that pool at dawn, watching the sun climb above the horizon, I feel a serenity that I had never experienced in the suffocating shadows of my parents' favoritism. A palm-lined garden surrounds the property, their silhouettes swaying gently with the ocean breeze, whispering a kind of freedom I had craved since childhood. And yet, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Sophie either. I knew exactly how that news would land. My mother's forced smile, my father's dismissive shrug, Sophie's condescending tilt of the head. Their reactions would not be rooted in joy for me, but in subtle jealousy or worse, indifference. They never wanted me to outshine Sophie, never wanted me to claim the spotlight that had always been hers by default. For once in my life, I wanted to keep my success untouched by their judgments. Instead, I chose to share the house and the truth of my achievement with people who had never doubted me. I invited 25 members of my extended family, the ones who had consistently been there through my struggles, cheering for me when my parents could not be bothered. My Aunt Linda was the first to know. She had always been more like a mother to me than Catherine ever was. I still remember standing in her kitchen at 14, learning how to simmer tomato sauce under her patient guidance, while my own mother was busy helping Sophie rehearse for yet another school play. Aunt Linda never treated me like a burden. She treated me like family, like someone worth teaching and investing in. Then there was Uncle James. The memory of him driving 6 hours straight to attend my law school graduation still warms me more than any words from my parents ever could. He wasn't wealthy. He didn't arrive with extravagant gifts, but his presence alone was everything. He sat in the crowd with tears in his eyes when my name was called, clapping louder than anyone else. He saw me, truly saw me. That meant more than the hollow congratulatory card my parents mailed with a $100 bill tucked inside. Emma and Ryan, my cousins, were also on the guest list. They grew up alongside Sophie and me, and they had witnessed the imbalance firsthand. They were the ones who whispered encouragement when I stayed up late studying, the ones who reassured me that I wasn't crazy for feeling invisible. Emma often told me, "One day, Maria, they'll regret underestimating you." Ryan, quiet but observant, would nod in agreement. They carried pieces of my story with them, reminders that my perception wasn't just a bitter exaggeration but the truth. When I revealed the Malibu house to them, it was not just about showing off a luxurious property. It was about creating a sanctuary where my worth was recognized, where my achievements were celebrated without comparison to Sophie. The unveiling was a carefully orchestrated moment. I waited until everyone was gathered in the spacious living room with its panoramic view of the Pacific before I stood by the glass wall and said softly, "This place is mine." I wanted you all to be the first to know. The room erupted with genuine joy. Aunt Linda clasped her hands over her mouth, her eyes shining with pride. Uncle James wrapped me in a bear hug, whispering, "You did it, Maria." "You really did it." Emma and Ryan laughed and cried at the same time, already running toward the pool deck like children on Christmas morning. Their reactions filled the space with a warmth I had never felt in my childhood home. For once, I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I wasn't second place. I was seen. But beneath the glow of that evening, a quiet resolve began to form. This house was not only a reward for myself, it was also the beginning of a silent plan for retribution. I didn't want revenge in the form of cruelty or public humiliation. What I wanted was more subtle, more enduring. I wanted my parents and Sophie to realize in their own time what they had dismissed. I wanted them to see that while they poured all their affection and resources into Sophie, I had built something extraordinary on my own. The thought wasn't born out of bitterness alone. It was born out of years of being treated as less, of having my milestones minimized, of carrying burdens that Sophie never had to face. The Malibu house would remain my secret weapon, a symbol of what could be achieved without their validation. And when the moment was right, when Sophie boasted about her perfect life, or when my parents once again brushed aside my existence, I would let the truth slip, not with arrogance, but with calm finality. For now, though, I was content with keeping it hidden, cherishing it as mine alone, shared only with the people who had earned the right to witness it. Each weekend I spent in Malibu, I felt the power of silence, the strength of not needing to prove myself to those who never cared. This was my fortress, my sanctuary, my proof that the girl they had overlooked had not only survived but thrived. And deep inside, I knew the day of reckoning would come. Not because I forced it, but because truth has a way of surfacing no matter how much people try to bury it. When that day arrived, they would no longer see me as the shadow of Sophie. They would see me as Maria, the woman who had risen, alone, and built a life more radiant than they ever imagined. Social media drama. I decided that this Thanksgiving would not be like any other. For once, it would not be a holiday where I showed up to my parents' house, sitting stiff at their polished oak dining table, listening to Sophie's endless stories while my own achievements were brushed aside. No, this year would be different. I wanted to create an event that not only celebrated gratitude but also silently announced that I had carved out a life beyond their narrow expectations. To make it unforgettable, I went all out. I hired a celebrity chef from Los Angeles, a man whose name regularly appeared in glossy food magazines, to design a menu that blended tradition with California freshness. There would be the staples, roast turkey, cranberry sauce, and sweet potato mash, but also a spread of dishes reflecting the West Coast's culinary vibrancy. Ceviche made from just-caught fish, avocado salads topped with citrus, and artisan flatbreads infused with rosemary and sea salt. Food was only the beginning. I brought in a photographer known for capturing high-profile events, the kind of images that later appeared in lifestyle blogs with captions like, "Inside the most stylish holiday gathering of the season." And for ambience, I hired a small acoustic band whose warm guitar chords and soft harmonies would float through the Malibu air like silk. I didn't just want a dinner. I wanted an atmosphere, a memory, an experience. But the Thanksgiving plan wasn't confined to the dinner table. I scheduled activities for my extended family, things that reflected the unique possibilities of California living. There would be surfing lessons for the adventurous ones, a private wine tour up in Santa Barbara for those who preferred something slower, and to close the evenings, an outdoor movie projected by the infinity pool with blankets, fire pits, and the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and jasmine. Preparations felt like an act of rebellion disguised as generosity. It wasn't just about hosting, it was about crafting a world where I was no longer invisible, where I could show my family what my independence had built. But of course, the real drama began before the turkey even touched the oven. A week before Thanksgiving, I casually let a trusted friend of mine film a short video during one of the final walkthroughs. Clip was simple yet striking. The Malibu sunset spilling gold across the ocean, the chef testing sauces in the open kitchen, and the acoustic trio rehearsing by the poolside. The video lasted barely 30 seconds, but it was enough to catch attention. And with the kind of deliberate care that only looks like an accident, I allowed her to post it on Instagram, tagging me and, crucially, tagging Sophie. I didn't need to wait long for the reaction. Within an hour, Sophie was calling. Her voice trembled, though she tried to cover it with forced brightness. "Maria, what is going on in Malibu? Are you hosting something? Why didn't anyone say anything?" I let out a laugh that sounded lighter than I felt. "You always said you preferred quiet gatherings, didn't you, Sophie? I was just helping you keep it that way." The silence on the other end was sharp, punctured only by her shallow breathing. I could picture her face, the crease of her brows, the way her lips thinned whenever she realized she was not the center of attention. The tension didn't stop there. Soon after Sophie's call, my phone buzzed again, this time with messages from distant relatives. Screenshots of the video were circulating, shared with little notes of excitement. "Is this Maria's house? When did she move to California? This looks incredible." The video went viral within our small family network, spreading not as news but as a quiet earthquake, shaking assumptions about who I was and what I had built. By the time Thanksgiving Day arrived, the Malibu house was alive with joy. The extended family arrived in waves, laughter echoing through the halls as cousins reunited, children raced through the garden, and the scent of roasted turkey mingled with ocean air. I spent the morning with Aunt Linda, helping her prepare the desserts. She still insisted on making her famous pumpkin pie from scratch, though the celebrity chef had offered to handle everything. "Tradition matters," she said, dusting flour across the counter, "even in a house as fancy as this." We laughed together, and for once, I didn't feel like I was compensating for anything. I felt at home. Side, Uncle James had gathered a group of kids, tossing a football back and forth on the lawn. His booming laughter carried across the property, drawing more people to join the game until the lawn became a miniature field filled with cheers. Meanwhile, Emma and Ryan wandered with glasses of wine, chatting and snapping candid photos against the fiery backdrop of the Malibu sunset. I stood on the balcony for a moment, holding a glass of champagne, watching the Pacific shimmer in fading light. It was a scene that felt like redemption, every laugh, every smile a quiet confirmation that I belonged, that my worth was undeniable. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. "Maria," she said, her tone sharp but strangely hesitant. "Where are you right now? Sophie said you're hosting some kind of Thanksgiving event in Malibu. Why didn't anyone know about this?" I closed my eyes briefly, feeling the ocean breeze against my face. Then I answered calmly, "Mom, I'm just doing what I want. The same way you always chose Sophie." The silence that followed was heavy, not just a pause but an acknowledgement. On her end, there were no excuses, no justifications, only the quiet recognition of a truth too uncomfortable to deny. I stayed on the balcony for a while longer after the call ended, reflecting. Hosting this event wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about reclaiming my place in a family that had overlooked me for too long. It was about creating a memory so powerful that it could no longer be erased by favoritism. As the evening unfolded, the photographer moved through the house, capturing moments that would later live on in glossy prints. Aunt Linda laughing over pie dough, Uncle James mid-throw with the football, Emma twirling her wine glass against the ocean view. The band strummed softly, their music weaving through conversations like a gentle thread, binding us all together. At one point, Ryan pulled me aside. "Maria," he said, lowering his voice, "I hope you know this, what you've done here, it matters. Not just the house or the event, but the way you've made everyone feel seen. You've given us something Sophie never could." His words sank deep, filling a hollow space I had carried for years. I smiled, but there was a tightness in my chest, a mixture of gratitude and the ache of finally hearing what I had always longed for. As night fell, the outdoor movie began. Families huddled under blankets by the pool, the fire pits flickering against the ocean's dark horizon. I sat among them, not apart, not second best, but whole. My heart swelled as I realized this Thanksgiving was not just a holiday. It was the beginning of rewriting my place in the family narrative. Of course, I knew the fallout was coming. Sophie's envy would not be quiet, and my parents' silence would not last. But for once, I didn't dread it. Because here, in this house I had built with my own hands and sacrifices, I finally understood something simple and profound. I didn't need their approval to feel worthy. Still, the phone calls and whispers had already set the stage for something larger. Social media had done what it always does, it amplified, magnified, and stirred. What began as a 30-second video was now the subject of group chats and phone calls across states. My Malibu house had become the family's uninvited guest at Thanksgiving, even for those who weren't there. And I was ready. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of being seen. Climactic confrontation. The Thanksgiving glow lingered in my memory like the aftertaste of fine wine. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not just tolerated. But peace in my family was never destined to last. The following Monday, while I was drafting contracts at the firm, my phone buzzed with alerts. Sophie had posted something on Facebook. Her words were thinly veiled but sharp enough to cut. "Some people think holidays are for showing off. Instead of bringing families together, they build walls and throw exclusive parties. Sad when success means dividing what should be united." Though she never mentioned my name, the implication was obvious. My Malibu Thanksgiving had become her weapon, painted as selfish indulgence rather than the gathering of gratitude it truly was. I expected her friends to rally, offering sympathy. But what unfolded was far different. Comment section filled quickly, cousins, old neighbors, even distant family friends, all asking questions Sophie clearly hadn't anticipated. "Wait, what do you mean divide? Maria invited us, and it was one of the best Thanksgivings we've ever had. Why weren't Catherine and Robert there? Did they choose not to come?" Honestly, sounds like Maria just wanted to celebrate with people who appreciate her. Then Aunt Linda, never one to mince words, entered the fray. Her comment hit like a hammer. "Maria invited those who have always stood by her. Catherine and Robert feel excluded, perhaps they should reflect on why. Maria has carried enough weight alone, it's about time she chose joy." Within hours, Aunt Linda's words had garnered hundreds of likes. The tide of public sympathy shifted toward me, and Sophie's attempt to shame me had backfired spectacularly. She deleted a few hostile replies, but the damage was done. The family, for once, wasn't blindly aligning with her. For my parents, however, the fallout was humiliating. They had always prided themselves on maintaining the appearance of a perfect family. To have their favoritism exposed on such a public stage was more than a bruise to their pride, it was a wound. A week later, my father called. His voice carried an unusual edge of softness, an almost rehearsed diplomacy. "Maria," he began, "your mother has been very upset. This whole situation on the internet, it has gone too far. Christmas is coming, and we think it's time for the family to reunite. We should put this all behind us." I leaned back in my office chair, staring at the Chicago skyline through the window. Snow flurries drifted like ash across the glass. My father's sudden desire for unity felt less like love and more like damage control. "Dad," I said evenly, "I already have plans. I've booked a Christmas trip to Aspen. A full week in the mountains, skiing, dinners, the whole experience." He hesitated. "That sounds wonderful. Then let's all go. Your mother would love it." I allowed a pause, letting the silence sharpen before I replied. "This time, Dad, I choose who is invited." The line went quiet. I imagined him tightening his jaw, resisting the instinct to scold me. For decades, my parents had dictated the terms of family gatherings. But now, for once, the power shifted. The days leading up to Christmas became charged. Word of my Aspen plans circulated among relatives, building anticipation. Emma texted me excitedly about her ski gear, Ryan joked about practicing snowball accuracy, and Aunt Linda began shopping for wool sweaters. These were the people who had never abandoned me, and I wanted to give them a holiday that reflected the love I had always yearned for. Sophie, predictably, was less enthusiastic. She called one evening, her voice brittle with forced sweetness. "Maria, Aspen sounds amazing. Tom and the kids would love it. I assume we're included?" I let out a measured sigh. "Sophie, this isn't about excluding you. It's about making space for people who have supported me. You made it clear in your post how you see me. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen." Her tone cracked. "You're tearing the family apart." "No," I said quietly. "I'm finally refusing to let the family tear me apart." Click. She ended the call. Christmas Eve arrived in Aspen with a brilliance that felt almost cinematic. Snow blanketed the mountains, glittering under strings of chalet lights. The rented lodge was expansive but cozy, its stone fireplace roaring with warmth, the scent of pine and mulled wine filling the air. Inside, laughter spilled from every room. Cousins unwrapped small gifts, children raced up and down hallways in wool socks, and Aunt Linda told stories over mugs of hot cocoa. Side, the slopes glowed under moonlight, promising adventures at dawn. But I knew this peace was fragile. I could sense the storm approaching. And sure enough, on the second evening, the confrontation came. The front door opened against a swirl of snow, and there stood my parents, Catherine and Robert, flanked by Sophie, Tom, and their children. No invitation, no warning. They had simply arrived, unannounced, faces set with determination. The room fell into stunned silence. The fire popped. A child's laughter died mid-giggle. All eyes turned to me. "Maria," my mother said, her voice tight but trembling. "We couldn't let Christmas pass without being together. Families don't keep secrets. Families forgive." I rose slowly from the couch, my heart pounding. "Secrets?" I repeated. "Like the decades you spent pretending Sophie was the only child worth celebrating?" My father stepped forward. "Enough. We're here now, aren't we? Let's just put this all behind us." Aunt Linda, never one to retreat, stood from her chair. "Robert, you don't get to waltz in here after ignoring Maria for years and demand peace on your terms. She's the one who built this. She's the one who has given us joy." My mother's cheeks flushed crimson. "Linda, this is none of your business." "It became my business the moment you neglected your daughter and left the rest of us to remind her she mattered," Aunt Linda shot back. Tension was electric, vibrating through the room like a struck chord. Sophie finally spoke, her voice dripping with disdain. "Maria, are you really going to stand there and act like the victim? You've always been dramatic. This house in Malibu, this trip to Aspen, it's all a performance." I met her gaze steadily. "If it's a performance, Sophie, then tell me why so many people cheered when they saw me step out of your shadow. Tell me why your Facebook post backfired. Maybe what you call performance is just me finally being seen." Her face tightened, and for once she had no quick retort. The silence stretched until my father exhaled heavily. "Maria," he said, softer now, "what do you want from us?" Question hung in the air, raw and heavy. I thought of the years of dismissal, the birthdays half forgotten, the graduation they skipped for Sophie's minor achievements, the engagement they reduced to a budget. And now here they were, asking me what I wanted. I swallowed hard. "I don't want apologies you don't mean. I don't want guilt. I want you to understand that I don't need you to validate me anymore. I've built a life without it. If you want to be part of it, you have to come as equals, not as judges." The fire crackled. My mother's eyes filled, though whether with remorse or frustration, I couldn't tell. Sophie looked away, biting her lip. Finally, Uncle James broke the silence with his calm, steady voice. "Robert, Catherine, the choice is simple. Either respect Maria and what she's created, or risk losing her entirely. You can't have it both ways." The words landed like a final verdict. That night, my parents stayed only briefly, retreating back into the snowy night with awkward hugs and promises to talk soon. Sophie barely muttered goodbye. The lodge exhaled as the door closed, the warmth returning like a tide. And as I stood by the window, watching the snow fall in quiet cascades, I felt something shift inside me. Confrontation had not healed years of wounds, but it had drawn a line in the snow, a line that could no longer be crossed without consequence. For the first time, I realized I wasn't fighting for their love anymore. I was fighting for my own peace. And that, at last, was a battle I could win. Thanksgiving in Malibu wasn't just a holiday dinner, it became my personal declaration of independence, a line drawn in the sand. It was the moment I decided that my worth would never again be measured by the approval or neglect of others. The images, the laughter, the videos, the shared memories from that night spread quickly among family and friends. My parents and Sophie, seeing how alive and joyful the gathering was, couldn't escape the truth. They had excluded themselves from a chapter of my life that was rich, vibrant, and deeply fulfilling. When Christmas came, I carried that same spirit with me to Aspen. I rented a chalet surrounded by snow-capped mountains where the air was sharp and pure and the lights twinkled against the white. Once again, I was joined by the people who had stood by me, cousins, uncles, aunts, and friends who had become like siblings. We created new memories, skiing down slopes together, sharing hot chocolate by the fireplace, laughing late into the night. My parents and Sophie did reach out, attempting to bridge the distance, but by then I had learned something far more powerful than reconciliation. I didn't need their validation to feel whole. I had built my own chosen family, one founded not on obligation, but on mutual respect and genuine care. And from this journey, I carry 5 lessons I want to share with you. One, family is not defined by blood, but by respect. Blood ties can be fragile if not supported by love, respect, and acceptance. People who lift you up, encourage you, and honor your presence are your true family. Sometimes you must step outside the box of tradition to see that clearly. 2, silence can be a form of strength. I never shouted back, never tried to humiliate those who excluded me. Instead, I built a life where my joy spoke louder than any argument. Sometimes the quietest response, living well and with integrity, is the most powerful one. 3, you have the right to choose your space. Whether it's a dinner table, a holiday gathering, or the course of your entire life, you are allowed to decide who sits beside you. Boundaries are not selfish, they are acts of self-respect. For healing doesn't always mean reconciliation. When my parents and Sophie reached out, I listened, but I no longer felt compelled to repair what they had broken. Healing meant moving forward, not necessarily together. Closure sometimes looks like peace within yourself, not a return to the past. 5, happiness is something you build, not something you're given. For years, I waited for recognition, hoping my family would one day see me. But happiness came only when I stopped waiting and began creating. Malibu and Aspen were not just trips, they were symbols of self-built joy, a reminder that I have the power to shape my own story. So if you've ever felt overlooked, pushed aside, or undervalued, remember, you don't need permission to shine. Create your own table, your own traditions, your own community of love. If this story spoke to you, I'd love for you to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Together, we can build a space where everyone learns to value themselves and finds the courage to step into their own light.